Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. President Donald Trump has announced his support for a legislation that would cut in half the number of legal immigrants allowed into the US while moving to a merit-based system favoring English-speaking skilled workers for residency cards. If passed by the Congress and signed into law, the legislation titled the Reforming American Immigration for Strong Employment Act could benefit highly educated and technology professionals. The RAISE Act would scrap the current lottery system to get into the US and instead institute a points-based system for earning a green card. Factors that would be taken into account include English language skills, education, high-paying job offers and age. Standing along with the two top authors of the bill, Senators Tom Cotton and David Perdue, Trump said that the RAISE Act ends chain migration and replaces the low-skilled system with a new points-based system for receiving a green card. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the implications of Trump's merit-based immigration plan for Indians. Joining me on the program today are Meera, Shankar, former ambassador to the US and Germany, Ajay Dua, former Secretary, Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Pramit Chaudhuri, foreign editor of the Hindustan Times, and SK Sarkar, executive member, Indo-American Chamber of Commerce. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador Meera, Shankar, I'd like to begin with you. What do you think of the RAISE Act?
Well, it's still at a proposal stage, and we don't know if it will be adopted and in what shape it will be adopted. If we look at the history of immigration reform in the United States, it's been fairly controversial, and consensus has been difficult to arrive at. I don't know if it's going to be any different this time, whether there will be a mood which will propel it quicker, but as of now, already there are many skeptics in the Congress about the proposal. So the second is that, on the, the legislative calendar as such already has so many other priorities, including healthcare reform, tax reform, raising the, debt limit, adopting the budget. There's already a very, very crowded legislative calendar. Therefore, the question is what priority is going to be given to this draft bill, or will it, come after all those other legislative priorities have been, steered through? In which case, it's going to be, down the road, not something which is imminent. I think the third thing from India's point of view is that the move towards high-skilled immigration would benefit many Indians who are technically qualified, but placing very high salary qualifications might make it difficult for immigrants to get in.
Sure. Right.
And the last is that if they do, as they are saying, that is remove the lottery system and country-based quotas or limits, then again, it's highly skilled people from countries like India which could benefit. The last is, will it also embrace a rebalancing of employment visas as part of the immigration reform? And what would those changes be?
Sure.
To the H-1B program, the L-1 program, and so on. We have to wait and see what those changes are before coming to any kind of judgment on whether it will be, helpful for Indians or whether it will be something which is negative.
Indeed, indeed. Pramit Chaudhuri, I'd like to bring you into the picture now. With all that's been happening in the US, with the Congress and the Senate working against Donald Trump, we saw what happened with the Russia sanctions as well. Is this something that the Congress is going to pass? Is this bill going to pass the test of Congress? And will members of the Congress and the Senate work in favor of Trump at the moment?
The general view from what I'm hearing in Washington is that there is very little support for the bill. The Democrats are dead against it because for them a bill that focuses on an immigration bill that focuses on education and income automatically discriminates against working class immigrants, which they oppose. And even among the Republicans have traditionally, a large number of them are actually supporters of immigration. This is a party that has supported free market positions, including on labor. A lot of them don't like the idea of halving, which is what the bill would roughly do, halving the total intake of legal migrants into the country from about 1 million to 500,000. And they strongly oppose that. Given that the Senate, the Republicans have a very small majority in the Senate of only a couple of votes, it would be almost, I suspect, impossible for Trump to be able to rally. He would need not only all of the Republicans, but probably even a few Democrats to support the legislation. Having said that, it's probably also the case that Trump is not overly concerned about whether it passes. A lot of what Trump has done, particularly on migration, whether it's the wall in Mexico or the ban on some Muslim-majority countries, has really been about looking like he's doing something rather than actually getting something done. As we now know, the transcripts of his conversation with the Mexican president, he actually says to the Mexican president, the wall actually is not very important, don't worry about it, but I've got to make this noise to keep my people happy. And this, I suspect, is the case with this policy as well. And he has a really poor record of getting legislation through. He's now 6 months in his administration. He hasn't passed any legislation at all.
Sure. SK Sarkar, is that what's going to happen? Trump, fighting desperately against the Senate and the Congress, and, he's going to continue to posture this way. He's going to try and reach out to his audience the way he's been doing for the past 6 months, but fight an uphill battle with the Senate and the Congress.
Well, if you look at the American history, Trump is possibly the first American president who's been in office for 6 months, and he hasn't had a legislative victory even once, despite the fact that his party, the Republican Party, controls everything right now. I mean, the Congress, the Senate, and as also the White House. So that's the situation which Trump has to live with. And Trump, I think, is not really, seems to be very concerned about that, because he says that he has his, he has to carry out his campaign promises. So that's what he's trying to do. Now, if you look at the act, it's called RAISE. Now, if you expand that, it means reforming American immigration for strong employment. No, I find that to be strong
economy.
Strong employment. That's what it says over there. So now that, according to me, is a bit of a misnomer, because America has a aging population. Its fertility rate is low, and it does require an influx of very young workers to spur the economic growth. So if that doesn't happen, then that would have an effect on the American economy as a whole. But if you look at Trump, I have to say something in favor of Trump. It would be that he wanted to end the deferred action for children, for childhood arrivals program, which was actually Obama's creation. But then he has some second thoughts on that today, and he says that anybody who's come into America for no fault of his as a child or at a younger age, so they should be allowed to continue. And even if you look at when he talks about reducing the legal immigrants over a period of time, I think, and I got that impression, that what he means here is that he wants to look at a benchmark of the historic norm rather than doing it at one go. In fact, he's talked about that. See, in 2015, the total immigrants were 1,051,000 and odd. And he wants to, in the first year, he wants to bring it down to 637,000 odd, going down to 539,000 in the 10th year. So those factors are something which will be of great. Trump is considering all those factors also. One casualty which would be is the EB-5 program, which Jared Kushner family businesses actually used for their real estate projects. So that would go away, and of course the five criteria that he's laid down. Speaking English, which is, he starts from the 60th percentile proficiency and goes up to 100th. And then he has financially sound investors from 1.35 million with the who can maintain a new commercial enterprise for 3 years up to 1.8 million. Then he talks about skills which will help which will spur the economy of the country. He talks about the prime age also, working age also, where his concentration is on the 26 to 30 bracket.
Right.
And although he's not ruled out the over plus 50 also, he says, I'll not give you points, but you are still welcome if you have education. He goes from high school up to the doctorate. He's even thrown in Nobel Prize, and he's also got the Olympic medal, which has come in. So that's 25 points to 15 points. It's difficult to get a Nobel Prize at 25 to 30, but there it is. Of course, we have an example of Malala Yousafzai, who's got it. But then it's not related to the economic skills.
I would think so. Somebody's already done a degree of analysis of this, very quick analysis, and come to the conclusion that the one nationality which would benefit the most from this is the Indian. We tend to be, most of us
and with no country-specific limits.
Absolutely.
This is great for India.
The country-specific limits are somewhere in another category, not there, that we would stand to benefit a lot from it. However, there's going to be some degree of uncertainty for people who've been sitting with the H-1B visas. And, it's taking 11 to 12 years to get your green cards. What happens to them as soon as you start applying for this, as soon as you start applying this criteria? Second, there is going to be some difficulty because of the definition of the word family. Now it's a nucleus family. If you are eligible, your spouse and your minor children get it. A lot of Indians have taken their parents as well as adult children. They will be out of the scheme of things. But having said that, let me just go back a little to the issue which raised. Apart from the fact that he's a beleaguered president, today's developments have caused further kind of problems for him, and the fact that he's trying to live up to what he had said in his campaign and then in the union address delivered earlier in the year, he talked about this, that he's coming forward with it. Today, he's just lent, and it's a very clever move if you think. He hasn't piloted the bill. He's gone and stood by two members of his party who had introduced this bill some months ago, says, I am supporting you. So there is a degree of support, saying a private proposition is now receiving the administration support. If you look at the contents of the bill from an American's point of view, he may not receive support of the Republicans. They've already commented. Democrats are talking already of saying this is against what the Statue of Liberty was for the poor, for the behuddled poor, masses moving towards the U.S., wanting the free to breathe free, etc. All that's fine. From the U.S.'s point of view, its economy isn't doing extremely well. There is an issue of both illegal as well as legal migration. It's also been listed by President Trump's spokesman yesterday that the migration which takes place today to the US, 1 out of 15 persons only has the skills which the US needs.
Yes.
Other 14 are probably not of as high relevance as the US requires. And then the people who come there, the ratio of those who move on to the welfare schemes is 50% amongst the immigrants and 30% amongst the Native Americans. So for a country which is not in the pink of health and has its own kind of problems, for them to move to a system which suits them. So what have they emphasized? A particular age. They've emphasized particular skills, saying high-end schemes no longer, we don't need low-end skills. They've talked about your professional abilities, they've talked about your entrepreneurial record. Those things do tend to make, some sense from their point of view. And if I wouldn't be surprised that if over time, and if his own personal problems in office those get a little come down a bit, I don't know, that there might be a degree of support start coming across the party line.
Sure,
that means
sure.
a bipartisan support for a proposition which he's only lent his shoulder to.
Right. Fair enough. Yes, Mr. Sarkar.
Just to quote Trump, he says today's low-scale system, just a terrible system where everybody comes in. Now, what he's trying to end is the chain migration. See, uniting families. Now, what Mr. Dua also referred to, that only 1 in 15 have the skills. So it's basically including all these family members who just pile on kind of a situation, just get the chance to get in. Because I'm there, so my nephew can come in, my family members can come in. So he's trying to stop that. So now I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I completely agree with Mr. Dua.
Other countries have similar kind of norms.
Canada,
Yes.
Australia,
Yes.
and the
Canada and
Indians,
Australia have that system.
and
yes.
Indians have been moving there in fairly large numbers.
Sure.
So it is actually a merit-based system, which I think must be given some kind of a weightage.
Sure. You know, Ambassador Shankar, if this is something that is going to suit the Americans, is going to help the Americans on the whole, why is it that so many members from within the Congress and you know, elsewhere as well, are opposed to a move like this? Is it because they're plainly against Trump?
No, I think this has been historical also. The big issue on which there used to be a difference in previous immigration bills was what to do with illegal immigrants who are already in the United States. The Democrats would say there can be no bill on immigration which does not provide a means for illegal immigrants who have already been in the US for a certain number of years to become legal. The Republicans would say that is out of the question, and this used to be the big sticking point. The second is that there are people who feel that American values, which have always welcomed migrants irrespective of their background, including those who are poor, and there have been articles referring to, you know, family members of Mr. Trump himself, as well as many members of his team, their grandfathers, great-grandfathers, who would not have been able to make it into the US under the present proposed system of immigration. So the second issue is that there are several liberal Americans who feel that this would be against American values. And the third is that there are Republicans who are who feel that for a healthy economy, you need more immigration rather than less. So limiting the numbers of bringing down the total numbers of immigration, legal immigration, would not help the economic health of the United States. So there are a variety of reasons why a consensus on immigration reform has proved difficult, because there are different views on different sides of the aisle.
Sure. Indeed. You know, Pramit Pal Chaudhuri, as far as the current immigration norms are concerned, what are they like, and how is the new bill going to, you know, change all of that? What's going to be the major difference?
Well, as I mentioned, the biggest shift will be the fact that the United States, the world's largest recipient of legal migrants in the world, would switch to a points-based or merit-based system. Australia began that policy, that as Canada adopted it, Britain has taken up some elements of that, but it's still a policy that I would not say is part of the global norm. But if America decides to take that up, it would effectively become the international norm for the next few decades. That'll be a huge shift in immigration policy, one of the biggest since the end of World War II. And that would be, I think, the real consequence of Trump if he's able to actually pass this bill through, to basically say that human capital, the amount of human capital an immigrant brings with him, would now be a key determinant or the main determinant of whether that person gets in as an immigrant into my country. That would be the main shift. And as I said, it would set a global, almost certainly set a global precedent around the world.
Sure. You know, Mr. Sarkar, what are Trump's options really to try and get this bill passed? And is he seriously going to try and get this bill passed? Is it something that's going to top his agenda?
Well, somehow I feel he's not convincing enough. You see, what really bothers me is that he's talking about partial changes in the immigration laws. He's not laying down a roadmap for the immigrants who have already come in illegally or otherwise. He has to have some kind of a, I mean, it has to be a law which must be foolproof. That is something which is not happening. It seems to be in bits and parts. So that is something which really bothers me. Other than that, I think principally I don't see anything wrong with the act as it is, with the bill as it is proposed.
Sure. So, but no. How does he work around trying to get this bill passed? Really, I mean, does he speak to his fellow Republicans? Does he speak to Paul Ryan, because he's been secretly working against him?
Well, that's politics of that country. So I can't suggest anything on that. But my point remains that he will have to make it watertight, which he is not doing. He's doing just partial changes. So that if he can do that, because principally I think he's on the right path. So if he has a roadmap for all the immigrants who have come in, as I said before, so then that would be of great help. Because today, like you have this example of 1.5 million Indians who are there on H-1B visas and who are actually waiting for the green card. Now, you have a queue which runs from 10 years to 35 years. Now, what happens to them? So, you know, please don't leave question marks. That's my point. So, sure. if you are a little more elaborate in what you're saying, so that would help to get the bill passed. I don't think the senators would have anything against the bill as such. Of course, not that he doesn't have too much of support right now. But I think if he improves on the bill in the sense that, of course, I can't advise him. But the point here is it's just a point that I'm making. I'm just suggesting that if he can have a wholesome kind of an approach, that would definitely push the bill through.
All right. Yes, Mr. Dua, you wanted.
A couple of things. The countries which could benefit from this new arrangement.
And I wanted to come to that. You know, what are the countries that could benefit from this?
That would include India for sure.
Yes.
Given our profile of our migrants there, he would probably have to work on them and address their issues a little more in a more focused manner than these two gentlemen who have proposed the bill and what the contents of their bill are. One point is what has just been mentioned, that he has to be addressing the issue of H-1B visa people in the queue for the green card. Something or something has to be done, otherwise the potential benefit to newcomers vis-a-vis the guys who are already there. And that's one issue. Second, he's today, from his own point of view, he's trying to meet politically by saying, yes, we are going to cut the migration into legal migration into the US, but I'm starting at 41% today, step it up by 1% every year, and then bring it to 50% of the current number. So that means the slashing down is a little less today, increasing, apply the cuts and get it down to 50% by within 10 years' time. That figure should not be made very sacrosanct as of now.
Okay.
There is a room to play around with that.
Sure.
Even though it might be in the bill of the two senators. Third, I would think, is that he has to be looking at the issue of separating this migration from illegal migration.
Indeed.
Illegal migration has much greater emotive issues attached to it.
Indeed.
Than the legal ones. How to handle that, he would have to work around, and then probably once he has got some countries which are publicly pronouncing support for a policy like this, it might be vested interests. And you know the way American Senate works, the American administration works, the lobbyists that work, so-called, including country lobbyists, as you know, and those kind of people will get into action. And something which he can't directly do himself, the people who see the benefit in it might be of some assistance.
Indeed. Yes, Mr. Sarkar.
I just wanted to add to what I was saying. You see, Trump's approach to the whole bill. You know, these two senators that we are talking about, they are conservatives. Tom Cotton and David Perdue.
Yeah.
He has to get the support of moderates like John McCain. Now, that is very, very important. If he does that, I think he just looks at senators as somebody who have to somehow carry out whatever he says. I mean, it doesn't happen. Things don't happen that way. He has to carry people with him. He's a leader. He's a politician. He must become a politician, which he is not.
Sure. Yes. Ambassador Shankar, a quick closing comment from you on who stands to lose if this new bill is passed.
Well, I think let's wait to see if it is passed. Let's not jump the gun, and also wait to see what the proposals are and what final shape to make an assessment.
We'll have to wait for its finality.
At this stage, you really cannot jump and say this is going to benefit X or B against Y.
Right.
Because there's a pretty long and tortuous process of legislative amendments.
It's not going to happen immediately.
It's not going to happen immediately.
Sure. Pramit Pal Chaudhuri, close the show for us with your concluding remarks.
Well, going on about who do you think will benefit, the experience of Australia and Canada indicated that Asian countries broadly benefited. The number of the Chinese, Indians, Filipinos became much more part of the immigration profile of those countries. Africa, the Middle East did poorly. And in the case of, uniquely for the United States, Mexico, which has been, until recently, Indians have now surpassed them in terms of legal migration. Mexicans, who used to be the single largest source of migration to the United States, would suffer because it's largely been working class Americans. So the immediate switch to a point system would effectively broadly benefit Asia, definitely, and India notably within that. And it would probably hurt Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Latin America.
Mr. Doa, I'm going to quickly let you slip in a closing comment as well.
I think all that's been said is that we don't know what the final format would be. But since we are discussing the bill as it is, right now, I would fully agree with what's just been said, that India stands to benefit, the Asians as a community stand to benefit, and Asia as a continent is both a challenge to the US as well as a support.
Sure. Okay.
So therein lies I would say the US diplomacy, the US entire scheme of things would have to reckon with that while trying to muster support for this. Otherwise, from the American point of view, a fairly balanced proposal.
Okay, on that note, then we'll have to call it a wrap on this edition of The Big Picture. Meera, Shankar, Ajay Dua, Pramit Pal Chaudhuri, SK Sarkar, thank you so much for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have today. See you again next time.